King Charles and Queen Camilla have arrived at the White House for the start of their 4-day state visit to the US.
King Charles has arrived in the United States.
Earlier, at Andrews Military Air Base, the King and Queen arrived, greeted by officials from the British Embassy and the White House.
Then there's other concerns, not least how it all looks for the King back here in the UK.
Not my King!
And Buckingham Palace did confirm the state visit will proceed as planned.
Royal tours tend to follow a similar script, a ceremony or two, a banquet and a couple of photo ops.
Buckingham Palace confirms King Charles' state visit to the US this week is set to, quote,
so that's certainly what the British government will be hoping, that a little bit of royal magic.
He describes his 2 meetings with Queen Elizabeth as among the top highlights of his entire...
His mother did it in 1991. We are told the speech will be around 20 minutes long. The government...
John.
The British King coming to visit the US president. How things have changed in 250 years.
Times when the Queen went to parts of the world that many people thought she shouldn't go, be that in Africa, be that in Eastern...
Diplomatically was quite important as well, because it's really only Britain that can bring these glamorous royals to America.
We're likely to hear him reference his personal faith and his military service, and royal sources say he will also...
And Buckingham Palace did confirm the state visit will proceed as planned.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is being investigated in the UK for misconduct.
Some critics aren't so sure. So what's going on here?
Washington.
We do need someone to smooth over the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom.
Trying to keep the UK's relations with America in check.
King Charles landed in America on April 27, 2026. His schedule was packed: state banquets, ceremonial reviews, a historic address, the kind that only happens once in a generation. Every minute accounted for, every move diplomatically choreographed. And somewhere in Montecito, California, just a few hours away, his son was watching it all unfold on the news. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Royal Archives, because here's what the headlines aren't saying loudly enough. Harry didn't just passively accept being left out. According to sources close to the situation, he was pushing, quietly, persistently. He wanted a meeting. He wanted to see his father on American soil for the first time in the country Harry has called home for 6 years. And for a moment, the palace actually considered it. That's where things stopped making sense. Charles flew across the Atlantic. He met with world leaders. He shook hands, gave speeches, attended garden parties. And in New York City, the same trip, the same visit, he sat down with Anna Wintour and Martha Stewart at a King's Trust reception. His grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet, live a short flight away. He hasn't seen them since 2022. Let that land for a second. 4 years. Archie turns 7 next week. Lilibet is 4 years old. And the last time King Charles held either of them was during the Platinum Jubilee, before the Spare fallout, before the Netflix documentary, before everything went quiet and cold between these two sides of the family. Charles has spoken in interviews about the importance of family, about keeping the door open, about hope. But hope, apparently, has a boundary. And that boundary sits somewhere between Montecito and New York. Royal expert Richard Fitzwilliams didn't mince words when Fox News Digital asked him about it. "There is simply no place for Prince Harry in this plan," he said. "It is essential that they focus on the host and visitors only, not on a situation where attention could be diverted by a media frenzy. This has to be avoided." And then came the line that stopped people cold. "The presence of the Sussexes would detract from that, and so it cannot be contemplated." Cannot be contemplated, not inconvenient, not difficult, not unlikely. Cannot be contemplated. Now, Fitzwilliams is a respected voice, not a tabloid commentator. When he speaks, royal watchers listen. And what he described wasn't a scheduling conflict, it was a deliberate position, a calculated call. Harry's presence, even privately, even quietly, was considered a liability. That is a very different story than the king was too busy. Here's what we know about the timeline. Back in late March, People magazine reported that the state visit looked, on paper, like a perfect opportunity for a reunion. Father and son on the same continent, Harry living just a few hours from New York. Charles's grandchildren, children he has barely seen, within reach. Sources told People the itinerary was tightly packed. When you're talking about a state visit, every minute is accounted for, especially when it's the king traveling as the invited guest of a head of state, a source said. The framing was careful, diplomatic, almost sympathetic. But then Naughty But Nice reported something the other outlets buried. Harry and Meghan had quietly tried to arrange a private New York meeting. Not a public appearance, not a photo opportunity, a private meeting. The palace initially considered it, and then declined. The reason given, according to those sources, was tied in part to Harry and Meghan's recent royal tour of Australia. Think about what that means. The door wasn't just closed, it was opened, looked at, and then closed again. Across social media, one question kept surfacing. If the palace had a moment, however brief, where a private reunion was on the table, what changed? What tipped the balance from possibly to cannot be contemplated? Some pointed to the Australia tour. Harry and Meghan had just completed a high-profile trip, drawing enormous crowds and significant media attention. Critics within royal circles had already begun framing it as a parallel monarchy, a competing narrative at a time when Charles needed the spotlight firmly on the special relationship between Britain and America. And whether that framing is fair or not, it does explain the timing, because the Australia tour didn't just generate warmth, it generated friction. There were quiet rumblings from palace insiders that the visibility of Harry and Meghan, the sheer scale of public interest that follows them, had become something the institution actively manages against. Not just ignores, manages against. And that distinction matters more than it might seem. There is a version of this story where Charles is a father caught between duty and family, genuinely constrained by protocol and diplomatic pressure, where the exclusion of Harry is painful for both of them, a casualty of circumstance rather than choice. That version has circulated for years. It's the version the palace has quietly encouraged. But then there's the other version, the one that the pattern keeps pointing toward. In May 2024, Harry visited the UK. Charles cited a full program. Many commentators called it a snub. Hugo Vickers, said a royal historian with deep ties to the institution, told Page 6 at the time that if the king wanted to see Harry, he would find time very easily. His exact words, "You can never be too busy to see your son." That was 2024. The language was careful, but the implication was clear. The busyness wasn't the problem. The willingness was. Then, September 2025. They finally met. Clarence House, private tea, about an hour, the first time in 19 months. Both sides called it positive. There was cautious optimism. Whispers of a thaw, of momentum, of something shifting. And then Harry came back to the UK again. Multiple times. Court appearances, charity engagements. Each visit, no meeting with Charles. Now Charles is in America, on Harry's turf. And still, nothing. That's not a pattern of two people trying to find their way back to each other. That's a pattern of one side managing distance while appearing to leave the door open. Shannon Felton Spence, a former senior figure at the British Consulate General of New England, was direct when she spoke to Fox News Digital. "This is very different from a normal royal visit," she said. "There is a lot hinging on this trip between the US and the UK, which have incredibly frayed relations at the moment. Every aspect of the program will be diplomatically strategic and coordinated. Strategic, coordinated, every aspect. And observers began pointing in one direction. If every aspect is strategically coordinated, then the decision to exclude Harry wasn't an oversight. It was part of the strategy." A Sussex spokesperson confirmed it plainly. "Father and son will not be meeting. Charles is here on a working state visit. Not a holiday." The word holiday stands out. As if the only acceptable reason to see your son, the one who lives in this country, the one whose children you haven't embraced in 4 years, would be leisure time. As if reconciliation requires a gap in the diary rather than a decision, and that's the thing Fitzwilliams said, that nobody has quite picked apart yet. He framed Harry's presence not as complicated maninéstigin, but as a distraction, a frenzy risk, something to be avoided at all costs. That's not the language of a family navigating pain, that's the language of crisis management. There's something else worth sitting with. Charles met Anna Wintour, he met Martha Stewart. He attended a King's Trust reception in New York, a charity event, warm and high profile, surrounded by influential names. All of this happened in the same city where Harry had reportedly been hoping, quietly, privately, to arrange even a brief meeting. The palace said no. And then Charles walked into that New York reception and smiled for the cameras. That image, whether intentional or not, tells a story. And across royal commentary spaces, people noticed. The question wasn't whether Charles had time. It was about what he chose to fill that time with. Some online discussions have pointed to a deeper institutional calculation, that Harry and Meghan's continued global profile makes any reunion a risk. Not emotionally, politically. Every time they appear together, the coverage fractures. Half the room celebrates the reconciliation. The other half scrutinizes every detail for signs of tension, manipulation, or leverage. The palace, according to insiders, has grown exhausted by that cycle. And so the calculation, it seems, has shifted, not toward healing, toward containment. Unconfirmed reports have circulated in royal commentary circles, suggesting that certain figures within the institution have quietly advised Charles that visible engagement with Harry, especially on foreign soil, especially during a diplomatically sensitive visit, carries more risk than reward. Whether that advice is behind the cannot be contemplated framing, nobody has confirmed. But the framing itself is hard to ignore. So where does this leave things? There is talk of a possible reunion when Harry returns to the UK in July 2026 for events tied to the one-year countdown to the Birmingham 2027 Invictus Games. Whether Meghan and the children will join him is unknown. Whether Charles will make time, genuinely make time, remains the real question hanging over all of it. Because here's what no palace statement addresses directly. Charles just spent 4 days in the country where his son lives. He met celebrities, he gave speeches, he attended garden parties, he greeted first responders and their families. He stood before Congress and spoke about shared values, about history, about bonds that endure across generations. He did not see Harry. He did not see Archie, who turned 7 next week. He did not see Lilibet, who has grown from an infant into a 4-year-old little girl her grandfather would not recognize on the street. And when asked why, the official answer, filtered through experts and spokespersons and carefully worded sources, comes back to the same phrase. It cannot be contemplated. That phrase is doing a lot of work. It's clinical. It's final. And it doesn't sound like a father talking about his son. It sounds like an institution closing a door it briefly cracked open, and hoping no one noticed the moment it reconsidered. The question that keeps circling, the one nobody in the royal establishment seems eager to answer, is whether this is still about timing, about schedules and state visits and diplomatic optics, or whether something shifted, something after Australia. Something that quietly reclassified Harry, not as estranged, but as incompatible with the image Charles is trying to protect. That story isn't over. The July trip is coming. And if Harry lands in the UK, does his Invictus work, and leaves again without seeing his father, it will be very, very hard to keep calling this a scheduling problem. Subscribe to Royal Archives, because when this story moves,